George, in your own career, besides working with MJ and Kobe and Phil Jackson and getting to be around those teams, one of the more interesting parts of your career was the work that you did with prison inmates. And even more interesting than that were the similarities that you found between working with prison inmates and then working with world championship teams. So I was curious if you could elaborate a little bit on some of the similarities you found and kind of just your general experience working with prison inmates.
Yes, so here's the interesting thing. No matter where you are, who you are, you have a masterpiece within. You have that greatness I talked about that you have to embrace. And so that's where the similarities are, is but how you direct attention, how you develop and use your self-awareness, how you develop your ability to self-regulate. That's the ability to regulate your thoughts, feelings, behaviors, even how you interpret things. And so I had some of the folks that were in jail, especially when I was working at this one facility where they were doing double life or life. They weren't ever getting out. They used to thank me for coming in. And when I went in there, I could talk to them about anything because they knew, just like Viktor Frankl knew when he was in the concentration camps, he may not have liberty, but he's the one that chooses what resides in his mind, what he focuses on, and what kind of quality of his life he can have internally. And so, yeah, so it was interesting for me because when I would go in there were guys in the class that I used to get high with, and it was a recognition for me that had I not got my act clean, I'd probably be there with them. But I was able to change so that I didn't get to that, and I was a functional. I still worked and everything. I was fortunate enough to do that, but it was the same deal. It was like the only time you have is now. The only person you could be is you, and all you really need is love. And you could say, how can you live in love in this environment? Because when the first time I went into a prison, just in the gatehouse, before you even go into the prison, it was so oppressive. It took me 4 days of meditating and praying just to get back to normal. I'm very sensitive, so I could see that. So I'm saying these folks, even the correction officers, they're living in that energy 24/7 or for a significant part of the day. And so helping them to be able to find a refuge, be able to find a place where they could be at rest. Joseph Campbell talked about, and even though the environment's this way, you still can be in that eye of the hurricane and not be in the whirlwinds, be in it. And that's extremely challenging, but it's very doable. And sometimes that's all they had because they didn't have anything else. And some of them were willing to talk to young kids and other people to try to prevent them from getting where they are and sharing their experience, strength, and hope on how they ended up being in prison, doing double life or whatever. And so it's interesting because I work with all types of inmates, and the ones sometimes they could be in denial about being in prison for 10 years. You say, how's that possible? Well, the mind can do a lot of things. But when you've been in there for as long as these guys have, there's no denial about being there. And you have to say embrace it. It's like everything else. You say yes to it, you embrace it, you generate the hope, and then you figure out how am I going to create space between stimulus and response and what kind of life, what kind of values am I going to align myself with?